Cam Rogers with you alongside Tom Downey. It is time to get into
your favorite one.
Yes, Eric Reid and where he could go in free agency. And Tom, well, there's a lot to break down with him because he has that ongoing collusion case against the National Football League.
Probably why he's not going to get signed.
That could be part of the equation.
Eric Reid 100% has the talent to play in the NFL. So anyone who says otherwise, you're just wrong. Like, I don't know how else to say it, Cam. Is Eric Reid a #1 safety? No. Is he a #2 safety? I'd say probably. But he's at least a #3, and he's a no doubt #4.
Yeah.
So the talent is still there for Eric Reid. He was a first-round pick after all. Now, the safety market in general has been very stagnant this offseason, and we'll make note of the conspiracy theory floating out there right now, Cam, was that, hey, maybe no one wants to sign a safety so that they don't have to deal with the Eric Reid accusations, that they're blackballing him.
These theories out there, folks.
Just saying.
Hey, it makes sense. All right,
let's make some sense.
Let's take a look at some of the teams that did not make the top 5. We've got the Titans, Giants, Packers, Vikings, and the Dallas Cowboys. There, a lot of buzz that maybe the Cowboys would have made a move for Earl Thomas.
Eric Reid's a little bit trickier than Trey Boston, who we did on Monday's show, because the Giants don't need another box safety, but maybe he could be kind of almost a hybrid linebacker for them. Green Bay did lose Morgan Burnett. I think he'd actually be a pretty nice fit with the Packers as that third safety option. You know how I feel about Andrew Sendejo? I think he'd be a nice fit with the Vikings. The Cowboys need another safety, but if all the teams on that list, they really don't like people kneeling.
Yeah,
That's why Jerry Jones got to pose in the Colin Kaepernick case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Cowboys will not sign Eric Reid. They would look at other safeties, which is also kind of why I don't really buy their whole none of the safeties fit our scheme, because they're all different safeties. The Titans, one note on them, Reid could kind of be a Jonathan Cyprien backup type guy, as a guy who's best in the box.
All right, so you mentioned kneeling and the National Anthem here, Tom, because, of course, Eric Reid was one of the first people to kneel alongside Colin Kaepernick. We want to ask you guys, would you sign a player if he plans to kneel during the National Anthem? It is a very important discussion because as we get closer to the regular season, that's going to be the big question, Tom. Who stays in the locker room, who comes out on the field and stands, and who comes out on the field and kneels?
The Kaepernicks and the Reid, I think, unfortunately, kind of lost the narrative on this. This was never about the military. This was always about police violence and racial injustice going on, and that has very much been lost. And that's the unfortunate part of this whole thing. It's just been used to now divide everyone else across the nation. But as for whether I'd sign someone, heck yeah, I would. If they help my team win, like all this, like we are okay with teams signing players who have marijuana issues or have DUIs or get in trouble with all kinds of the actual law, the actual bad things around, but they're not allowed to kneel during the anthem. That's where we draw a line. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, sign me up for Eric Reid. If I'm the Cowboys, the Vikings, whoever, and he can help my team win, and it makes sense from a monetary perspective, yeah, get him on my team. Absolutely. Imagine you're the Cowboys and you'll sign Greg Hardy, but you don't want Eric Reid.
That's a good point.
That makes sense.
Hit us up in comments. Let us know what you think. All right, let's get into the top 5 teams for Eric Reid, and we will start off with the Carolina Panthers, a team that is probably known better for its front 7 rather than its secondary, so it could use some
That's
help.
kind of been the MO under the past couple DCs, is that, again, you have to go cheap at other areas,
Sure.
and the Panthers have typically tried to go cheap at safety, and I'm really concerned about it this year, Cam. I'm not the biggest Rashawn Golden fan. We'll see how he fares as a first-year player. Denoris Searcy wasn't really that good with the Titans. They lost Kurt Coleman. I thought it was a big need going into the draft and the offseason. I'm not sure they really took care of it, but I think they're low because I think the Panthers might feel like they have. I do like Mike Adams on that depth chart, but I just think they're thin right now. I don't want Colin Jones, Desmond Southwood playing big roles at this point in their careers. Maybe they thrive with the actual snaps, but if I'm the Panthers, I see Eric Reid and I go, I like this idea. And if you really need him to, he can play some linebacker, and Thomas Davis is suspended for 4 games.
Right.
So you kind of knocking out 2 birds, 1 stone there.
Adams, Searcy, Golden, Jones, Southward there on the depth chart for the Carolina Panthers.
I'm just concerned about it.
The cornerback position is a little scary to me as well, but that's a whole other discussion.
We'll get to Rashad Breeland on a future show, who almost signed with the Panthers. So stay tuned for that.
The Panthers are there at number 5. Let's go to number 4. We've got the Arizona Cardinals here, and of course, Tyrann Mathieu is no more, and Eric Reid is certainly no replacement for the Honey Badger, at least to a perfect extent. No. But he could help.
I think the reason I have the Cardinals ranked lower, they were up much higher. I think they were #1 for Trey Boston because they brought him in for a visit. But the reason they're 4 for Eric Reid is that isn't he just a little bit low or a little bit too similar to Deion Buchanan in the end?
Yeah, I guess so. And you think that maybe it wouldn't make much sense to bring him in if he's a replicant?
Like they're a little bit too similar, so I don't know if that's the ideal route to go about for those players. So I think it still makes some sense if you want to make Reid into a safety only, make sure he doesn't end up playing some of the nickel roles. But I think it could still make some sense. And I think in reality for Arizona, they might not make any moves because they don't want to add more safeties. Steve Wilks is now there, comes over from Carolina, a position or a team that doesn't value safeties as much. And I love Budda Baker. Antoine Bethea can still play a key role. But if I'm Arizona, I do not want Rudy Ford as my #3 safety this year. Plain and simple.
You know, I think Steve Wilks will do whatever he wants to bring in playmakers, and Eric Reid, I feel, is actually a playmaker who deserves an opportunity, and he won't have to go far, of course, from San Francisco to Arizona, so makes a lot of sense there. We'll see what happens. Arizona's at #4 on the list. Let's take a look at #3. I mentioned San Francisco. Yeah. Well, maybe he goes back to the 49ers, a team that tried to sign J.J. Wilcox, then he got stage fright, and then he left. They did sign Anton Exum, former Minnesota Viking, re-signed him, so he's still in town, so maybe that can kind of help things there. San Francisco checks in at 3.
I think part of what will depend on if the Niners do want to bring back Eric Reid, which I do think they have some interest in, and they're clearly okay with the whole kneeling thing and the anthem protest and all that, or protest during the national anthem, excuse me. I think it depends on where do they play Tarvarius Moore and where do they play Jimmy Ward, Cam? Because one or both could play some corner as well.
So Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for San Francisco right now, is exclusively putting Jimmy Ward at outside corner. He's not using him at nickel. He's not using him at safety. He actually wants Jimmy Ward to compete with Ahkello Witherspoon and Richard Sherman to actually, I guess, win a starting gig as an outside corner, which makes no sense to me. Now, OTAs are available to the media in very scarce fashion, so perhaps there's more that is going on right now. I like Jaquiski Tartt a lot, Adrian Colbert as well. Jimmy Ward's going to be used in however fashion that the 49ers need him. He's not going to be an outside corner.
We put them all up there because there's actually quite a bit of bodies right now at these for San Francisco. You got Marcel Harris, I thought was kind of a surprise pick.
Dealing with
out
an
of
injury
Florida.
right now, yep.
Don Jones is a special teams guy.
There's
so
Exum.
That they wanted J.J. Wilcox makes me think they are open to getting in another more of an impact safety. Now, they filled that hole with Exum, but Exum's not as good as Wilcox or even as good as Eric Reid. Right. Not even close to it. So that makes me think maybe SF would still consider bringing back Eric Reid, but there's a reason they're 3rd on this list here.
Yep. San Francisco is there. Let's go to #2, and we are going to take a look at the Indianapolis Colts here. So, of course, the big-time name in that safety tandem would be Malik Hooker. He's coming back from injury.
And Hooker and Eric Reid, I think, would be a nice 1-2 punch. The other side of it is they are still hoping that Clayton Gathers comes back from his injury, same with Hooker as well, and that they remain in good shape. The other thing that I'll mention with the Colts and why it could be a nice fit, Reid can play some linebacker, and the Colts don't really have a great linebacking core. They did draft Darius Leonard, who has some nice upside, but he is only one guy. Maybe Anthony Walker emerges, but I think Eric Reid, for a Colts team that lacks talent on defense, I think Eric Reid would be one of your best 11 players on that defensive side of the ball. Of course, the argument against the Colts overall, Cam, and this is why they haven't made a lot of moves, is they know they're rebuilding. They're not trying to spend just to spend. They are okay, I think, with not being as good this year and giving young guys like Hooker and Gathers and even a TJ Green, who we'll see how he pans out in the end, more reps in the interest of developing them down the road and not necessarily worrying about the win-loss mark in year 1.
Second most salary cap space in the league right now, and Chris Ballard, the GM there, has been very patient in terms of not making any rash moves.
Building through the draft almost exclusively.
And I do just want to note with Eric Reid here and the National Anthem and the kneeling and all that, well, of course, the Indianapolis Colts were involved in that whole Mike Pence situation there when he left the stadium and all of that stuff. So I want to point that out, that maybe that's kind of
planned from the beginning, which was so annoying, but okay.
Everybody think about that a little bit when we're talking about Eric Reid here in the Colts. But let's go to number 1. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs here, a team that needs some help in that secondary. Of course, they bring Kendall Fuller on over via a trade with the Washington Redskins.
Like him in the nickel.
Yeah, that helps in nickel corner, which is very specific.
Still a key role, but yeah.
Anyway. Meanwhile, safety, what do you think about Eric Reid?
I think it'd be a good fit.
Okay.
I know that Eric Berry does kind of play along the line of scrimmage at times as well, and maybe a Trey Boston would be a better fit for Kansas City if you want someone who can kind of go a little bit more both ways. But if I'm the Chiefs, like, go get a safety, man. I mean, I like Armani Watts. I like him a lot as a prospect. I don't know if you want to bank on him in year 1.
4th-round pick.
Just only based on where he went. I think he'll be a good player, but he's a little bit inconsistent still coming out of A&M. I never liked Ron Parker. The good news for the Chiefs is that there is a very clear correlation how the secondary plays, especially the safeties, with Eric Berry versus without Eric Berry. And they say correlation doesn't equal causation. I'm pretty sure this is causation. When Eric Berry's on the field, the Chiefs have a better secondary.
Did you take AP Stat?
No, I'm not that good at the maths.
But yes, you have a point. Eric Berry is the glue to that secondary in a lot of ways. And
he makes it into a cake with the sugar and the water and all that.
So would it be Eric Berry and Eric Reid?
I think so. I think it would be the Erics. That's exactly what I think it would be, because I guess there technically is an Eric right there with Eric Murray, but
not the same.
I think Reid is better than Murray. Daniel Sorensen, I don't like all that much. Leon McQuay is intriguing, but I think he'll be more of a number 3 guy down the road, even just now. They brought in Robert Golden, who, cool.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Congrats. And then a bunch of guys that I think most people haven't heard of before, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
So if I'm the Chiefs, sign me up for Eric Reid. I think it'd be a good fit there. Of course, I do think in the end, Cam, his anthem kneeling is going to be an issue for a lot of NFL teams out there. And that's kind of why he's been so, the market has been nice for him, and maybe even other safeties as well.
I think Eric Reid is one of the more intriguing names to watch out for as we go throughout the offseason.
I just don't know if he's going to get signed, even though I think he absolutely should be. Talent-wise, you cannot make an argument for why Eric Reid has not been signed.
So
you just can't.
Week 1 comes around, and you think he's still unemployed?
I think so.
By that point.
Unless the NFL just wants to make sure, hey, let's get this thing over with. Let's get rid of this collusion lawsuit because we're going to lose, and they make a team sign him.
Sure. All right, well, here are some teams that maybe will sign him. The Carolina Panthers at 5. Arizona Cardinals check in there at number 4. 49ers, maybe a reunion at number 3. Indianapolis Colts at number 2. And the Kansas City Chiefs check in at number 1. To put a bow on things with Eric Reid, the Cincinnati Bengals did show interest in this guy.
Yes, they did. And then it kind of felt like maybe they were going to sign him, and then Mike Brown comes in and says, hey, are you going to kneel? And Eric Reid says, well, I haven't made up my mind there. And Mike Brown more or less says, well, we don't want you to kneel. And then he was never signed. And then they drafted Jesse Bates out of Wake Forest in round 2. So now they really don't need a safety. So that's why they weren't even on the potential teams to monitor outside of that.
All right, that's the rundown there with Eric Reid.